Prince George at Trench Brewing. This is where I work now. So I'll give you a really quick tour of some of the main pieces of equipment that we use throughout the day. Here, this is the brew house, which consists of the mash tun, which is where we steep the grains and extract those sugars. The brew kettle, so that's where we boil the wort to sterilize it, and also a few other reasons we'll get into later. And the whirlpool. Not every brewery has one of these. A lot of them do. This is where you put the hot wort and spin it up. And what that does is it leaves a lot of the solid matter behind before you knock out into the fermenter. And then we've got the heat exchanger off to the side. Hot liquor tank. Basically, in brewing terms, what that means is a big old hot water tank. So it just gives us as much hot water as we need throughout the day for brewing and cleaning. Some random other stainless steel parts back there and some chemicals. And then we've got our tank farm, so our fermenters. Now we've got 6 of these suckers. And as you can see, a lot of breweries nowadays are running these conical fermenters. So they have that cone-shaped bottom, which makes it just way easier for us to harvest yeast. And as you can see, everything is stainless steel, and we keep things very, very clean because it's a tightly controlled process. So once we make that wort and cool it down and knock it out, the only thing we want in there is the yeast that we want to ferment that wort. So yeah, everything gets really well cleaned and really well maintained. So I'll take you through step by step through the brewing process, just briefly, because that's what I'm doing next. And then I'll show you the lab, and that'll be the tour. So yeah, hope you guys have fun. All right, so this is what we call the mash in, the dough in. We're basically milling some of the grains, just break them open a little bit so we can have access to the inside of the grain, get those sugars out. Mixing it with a little bit of water at a very specific temperature. And then it's going to sit in here for about an hour. So we can let those enzymes convert those polysaccharides and those starches to simpler sugars that the yeast can eat. At the end of the mash, and we've given those amylases enough time to convert all those big sugars into smaller sugars. And now we want to move that solution from the mash tun into the brew kettle. Now this is called the lauter. We do this very, very slowly, and at the same time, we rinse the grain with hot water, so about 74, 75 degrees Celsius. This is called the sparge. Whoa. And what that does is that it stops that amylase activity and also decreases the viscosity of the liquid so that we get a better extraction. So we move more of those sugars over, as many as we can, into that brew kettle. So we've now run off all of the wort from the mash tun into the kettle that we want. And we're going to bring it up to a really nice vigorous boil for about 60 to 90 minutes. We do this for a number of reasons. It pasteurizes the wort or sterilizes the wort because we don't want anything in there except for the yeast that we're going to pitch later. Also, this is when you add the hops. The longer the hops sit in there, they have an alpha acid that isomerizes and imparts more bitterness into the final product. You get some nice caramelization as well. You're boiling sugar water, so you're going to get some darkening and some nice caramelization there. You're driving off flavors, so there's things like DMS in there that you want to drive off so that they don't show up in the final product. And also, this is when you would add some adjuncts too, if you'd like. So if you're making a Belgian Saison, throw some peppercorns in, 10 minutes left in the boil, there you go. So this is just going to roll on, a nice vigorous boil for the next 60 to 90 minutes, and then we'll knock out. Okay, so this is basically the end of the journey for the wort that we've created. It's been boiled, it's been cooled off, it's now coming into the fermenter, at the bottom of these conical fermenters that we use. And from this point on, we're just going to leave it up to the yeast. So this fermenter has been torn down, stripped, cleaned really, really well, and sanitized all before we do this, because like I said, the only thing that we want in there is the yeast that we pitch. So once this wort goes in, we pitch the yeast out of our harvested keg and let the yeast do its job. So hopefully if we've done everything right, we won't end up with any nasty off flavors from any contamination from any other microbes. The yeast will be a nice healthy population. It'll go through fermentation really strong and give us the exact product that we're waiting for at the end and we're expecting. So yeah. So one last thing I wanted to show you, one last stop, is our lab. So I'm a little bit nerdy, so I love this part. Yeah, it's humble here at Trench. I don't have a lot yet, but I do have enough to do cell counts. I mean, all you really need is a microscope, a really good heat densitometer, and a good scale, and then your chemicals. So I'm doing one right now, and you can see my cereal dilutions here. On top of that, all you need is some phosphoric acid diluted. You put that in the solution to keep the cells from clumping together. And methyl blue. So you stain your cells right at the very end. The live ones can excrete that methyl blue. The dead ones can't, so they remain blue. So as you're counting, you can get a good gauge of live and dead cells at the same time. So hopefully in the future I get to add a little more microbiology to my brewing life here, agar plating and whatnot, so we'll see. Here's hopeful. Yeah, so with that, I'll conclude the tour. Just remind you, I'm at Trench Brewing in Prince George. If you guys are ever in the neighborhood, stop in for a pint. Cheers.